Okay, we are at 29 people and 1 minute past the bottom of the hour, so we are going to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Whitney. I am the director of the Arctic Energy Office at the Department of Energy, based here in Anchorage, if you don't already know me. Welcome to the April meeting of the Hydrogen Working Group, the Alaska Hydrogen Working Group. We have monthly meetings virtually. Throughout the academic year. We take a break during the summer, and we're happy to have you all here. Today, we will be having a presentation by David Clarke, whom many of you already know with Alaska Marine Power, about some of his work on hydrogen export potential to Japan from Alaska. But before we get to that, we always kick it off with introductions and updates from the crew. This is your chance, if it's your first time on the group, to introduce yourself, or if you've been lurking in past meetings and haven't had the courage to introduce yourself, please let us know who you are and where you're calling from and what your affiliation is. It's a friendly group, nobody bites. So I would like to open the floor to any new attendees or anyone who has any updates for the group. This is our chance for some informal discussion. I think I see some new faces, so if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to have to call on you.
Hi, my name is Franik Hashuk, and my camera is not working, so I'm going to log off and log back in here shortly, but I'm with Sandia National Labs, and I'm working on geologic hydrogen broadly for Sandia, as well as I've made 2 trips up to Alaska to meet with folks there and talk about geologic hydrogen and stored hydrogen opportunities within the state. I'm really excited to be here and learn more about the different opportunities up there. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing you, what you look like when you log back on. And Franik, would you mind putting your contact info and affiliation into the chat when you have a moment? That allows folks to follow up with you as desired for further connections.
Will do.
Thank you. Let's see here. Steve Catalano, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Director of Operations for Cook Inlet RCAC. However, I'm here for my personal edification. So I'm keenly interested in hydrogen and its many uses. So I thought this would be a great place to start with it. Thank you.
Great. What does RCAC stand for, Steve?
Regional Citizens Advisory Council. Our primary mandate is to oversee the safe production and transportation of crude oil in Cook Inlet. And this hydrogen is obviously outside of our scope, but again, this is just a personal interest.
Great. And where are you calling us from today?
Kenai.
Kenai.
Actually,
excellent.
I'm in Nikiski, but our office is in Kenai.
Terrific. Welcome, Steve. Glad to have you on the call.
Really nice to see you, Steve.
Good seeing you, JR.
Great. Please put your email and affiliation in the chat so that we can follow up with you and make sure you're on our distribution list, and so others can reach out with questions as needed. Allegra, please introduce yourself and welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I think Franik and I were at the same meeting in Fairbanks in October. I am Allegra Hosfordshire. I'm also a geologic hydrogen proponent and researcher. I've studied the Alaska North Slope for a long time, so oil and gas for many, many years. And I sit on the board of directors of Pantheon Resources, who many of you know explore for oil and gas south of Prudhoe Bay. But I spend most of my time, now that I've retired from Stanford, as a full-time researcher mostly in natural hydrogen, a little in geothermal, a little in CCUS. And in fact, I've got some natural hydrogen prospects going on with a company that I work with in Canada who has already leased some land up there. So I'd love to talk more about that maybe after the summer break, once that project really gets going.
Terrific. Patty, put a pin in that to follow up with Allegra for a presentation next fall. Thank you, Allegra. Please
Thank
put
you so
your
much.
email and affiliation in the chat so folks can follow up with you. We've definitely got a number of geologic hydrogen enthusiasts in our group here.
Great. And find me on LinkedIn, obviously, if you need me.
Okay, terrific. Who else do we have who's new here or maybe hasn't introduced themselves before?
Hi, this is George.
Hi.
I work with Citizens Climate Lobby. Very interested in hearing what we might be doing as far as being able to export green hydrogen from Alaska.
Terrific. Thanks, George. It's good to see you again, even if it's just a picture. Please put your email in the chat. Iqbal, did I see you trying to get in there earlier?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Iqbal. I'm based in Vancouver, and I'm interested in promoting green energy and low carbon hydrogen. That's why I'm here to explore what's going on for the hydrogen projects in your side. And I think it's a good opportunity to attend your meeting. Yeah.
Great. What's your affiliation?
I'm a freelance marketer.
And what do you market?
My background, I was promoting for green building, and now I'm exploring green energy and hydrogen.
All right. Would you mind putting your email in the chat so we can connect with you?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much. All right. Other introductions.
Hi there. My name is Sam Jashevsky. I'm up in Fairbanks, and I'm an exploration geologist. Spent most of my career looking for metallic minerals, but I'm interested in seeing Alaska and the rest of the world get a little more efficient in our energy usage. So tracking what you're talking about here.
Terrific. Thank you, Sam. Please put your email and any other relevant affiliation information in the chat when you have a chance. Glad to have you on board.
I am on your
Bob?
email list.
Okay, great, good. And Bob, I do see your note in the chat and I'll address that in a minute. Excellent. Who else do we have? If you're not new, are there any announcements or updates to share with the group?
I could do a quick introduction. This is my first meeting. I'm Lexi. I'm with the United States Hydrogen Alliance. I'm a policy and communications manager. Normally, my other colleague attends these meetings, but she's out today. But I've heard really good things about this working group, so I'm really excited to see what you guys all talk about today in the presentation. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lexi. We're glad to have you. Please put your email in the chat if you wouldn't mind so we can follow up with you. And thanks for subbing in. JR.
Thanks. I should announce about a month ago we officially FID'd the project. So for this is the for those of you that don't know about it, we're putting in a plant on the North Slope that will make methanol and hydrogen to treat diesel to make ULSD up in Prudhoe Bay. So it'll be kind of the first hydrogen stream probably we have access to, and that's we actually now have our debt and our equity lined up. So now we're just kind of closing our loan paperwork and should be able to start building modules this summer. So that's exciting.
That is so exciting, JR. How far are you hoping to get this summer?
Well, the plant will be modular, so it'll be about 2 years worth of a development cycle altogether. And that first year, a lot of it's going to be building the modules down in Texas, and then we're going to be moving a lot of stuff to the North Slope. So the only activity like in Alaska in the upcoming year, maybe that just driving piles on site. But then in the following year they'll be assembling all the modules and outbuildings and piping and then the commissioning, which should put us online and actually producing everything in mid-2027.
Very exciting. Thank you for sharing that update. We appreciate it. And JR, I know lots of people know you on this call, but if you wouldn't mind sharing your email address for anyone who's new, that would be great.
Sure.
Terrific. Gail.
Aaron, are you
Oh,
there?
sorry. Yes. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Our small company based in Juneau, Alaska Applied Sciences, Inc., on the 27th of last month submitted a full application to Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub for a new project under an RFP they had issued a month ago or so called Replacing Southeast Alaska Summer Cruise Ship Fossil Fuels with PNWH2 hub-sourced clean hydrogen-derived fuels to facilitate the cruise industry's Green Corridor greenhouse gas emission reduction program. End of quotation. So if I have permission to distribute that, I'll send you a copy and you can decide what you want to do with it. It's in two volumes. One's technical, one's business. So it was a big effort for us. And I met with Chris Green, who's the director of that organization, on the 11th, and asked if he would like us to submit that, recognizing that it's really not going to be competitive. It's too far in the future to really be that. And he said, yes, please do. We'd like to see your best effort. Thank you. That's all.
Excellent. I appreciate it. That's great news. Keep us posted for sure. Really exciting. All right, Gail, is that you there?
Yes, hello everyone. How are you? Gail Morrison, geographer within Boehm, Alaska. We have interest in hydrogen and critical minerals, renewable energy, so I'm finding a lot of people to contact, and I'm also one of the co-leads for the Seascape Alaska Alternative Energy meetings. So if anyone would like to give a presentation on some critical minerals or alternative energy solutions, please let me know. My email is going to be in the chat. The presentations are about 50 minutes long, pretty informal. We're also a great group in case you'd like to test out your presentation. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Gail. And if you have any links to information about the Seascape group to put in the chat, that would be great too.
Okay,
So.
I'll look for some.
Terrific. Tim, how's it going?
Hey there, doing pretty well. Thank you, Aaron. A quick mention of the Alaska DOT and Public Facilities Sustainable Aviation Fuel, or SAF study. I think I might have mentioned this on a previous call here. They're currently working, the DOT consultants are currently working on the feedstocks study and some economic analyses of those feedstocks that would go towards sustainable aviation fuel primarily. They're also keeping a bit of an eye on the potential output of renewable diesel, but primarily they're focused on the sustainable aviation fuel output. On the input side of it, there has been a group of us, Alaska Energy Authority folks, some DOT staff and myself, saying, hey, are you looking at kind of the full pathway or set of pathways towards sustainable aviation fuel, which could include the electrolyzed hydrogen and molecular carbon synthetic fuel pathway. That seems to be less likely to be included in their feedstocks study. So more of what they're focused on is going to be looking at woody biomass, fish oil, landfill gas, and things like that. So this is a bit of a pertinent negative, I guess you could say, in terms of the report. They probably won't be looking at that full synthetic fuel pathway where you take electrolyzed hydrogen as part of it. So that's something we can think about for future studies, is my guess.
Excellent. Thank
Simon
you.
Harrison here. We were talking with the DOT just a couple of days ago, and hopefully your concerns will be addressed. So we'll talk. David will talk a bit more about that in the presentation.
Okay, great. Sam, did I see you trying to get a word in there? No? Okay. Tim, what's the timeline on that DOT SAF study?
Fairly quick. The governor wants a report by the end of this year. I would note that there's a little different information you'll see in the March economic newspaper there, or newsletter. But at least what the DOT staffers have said is that they're still on that end of year pathway for the report. And we were actually just with the economic team this last hour talking to folks on the fish waste side of things. So Simon, I'm very interested to hear that update when it comes from your side, from your team.
Terrific. And who's the lead on that study, Tim?
Within the DOT staff, it's Rebecca Garrett.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Other introductions, announcements, updates. This is great news to hear about things moving along. Don't be shy. I promise it's a friendly group. Hi, Doug. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, just a quick announcement. We were fortunate in completing our application to FERC for the Cook Inlet Tidal Energy project. So that is moving forward. That application is in. That's the first draft pilot license that's been issued or applied for in Cook Inlet. So we're very excited about that and continuing to move the project forward.
Excellent. For those who don't know, Doug is with Ocean Renewable Power Company, ORPC. Doug, please put your contact info in the chat for anyone who's new to get in touch with you.
Will
Appreciate
do.
that.
Thank you.
Great. Other updates or introductions? Appreciate the activity in the chat. All right. While you guys are thinking about any other announcements, I will address Bob's comment in the chat. First week of March, I went to DC and I briefed the Secretary of Energy on work that the Arctic Energy Office does and Arctic equities for the department. I will say that I really enjoyed my time speaking with the Secretary of Energy. He's incredibly well informed about energy and very pleasant and very reasonable, and was nodding voraciously as I was telling him that circumstances are quite different in the Arctic from the US and that we need unique solutions. He's very interested in coming up to Alaska and understanding our challenges in both our urban and rural settings, and seems to be someone who's open to ideas and local perspectives. So I am feeling optimistic about what we may be able to accomplish together. It's a very dynamic time in the federal government right now, as you may all know. And we are still clarifying priorities and directions. But I can tell you that the Secretary is focused on energy affordability. He's focused on security. The liquid natural gas pipeline is certainly a priority for this administration. But I also heard, bullish support for geothermal and small modular reactors. And he even had some questions about hydrogen. When I told him about, hydrogen as a means of unlocking our resources, he wanted to understand more. So hoping to get him up here soonish and let him see for himself, since I always find that's the most effective way for folks to really understand our unique challenges and opportunities up here. So again, a very good visit. I think the Arctic Energy Office, stands to do well in this administration. There are a number of executive orders that mention Alaska. There's even an executive order dedicated to Alaska, the one on unleashing Alaska's extraordinary research potential, for which our office has been designated the lead in coordinating, what the actions should be out of the department. And granted, the Department of Energy is not a permitting office like the Interior and other offices, but there are still ways that we can support that effort across the federal government. You probably also heard news about the National Energy Dominance Council, for which the Secretary of Interior is the chair and the Secretary of Energy is the vice chair. So our department will be playing a large role in that as well. So happy to answer any additional questions individually or whenever. But you know, we're getting our footing underneath us. I am still here. I'm still in the Arctic Energy Office. I'm still with Department of Energy. And I believe that we can still champion many of the same causes that we've been championing all along, which is affordability and energy security for you know, our residents and stakeholders here in the Arctic. So with that, I will just ask once again if there are introductions or announcements or updates. Okay.
Aaron?
Yes. Hi, Bill.
It's Bill again. Were you aware that Secretary Wright's former company, I guess he still owns some of it, Liberty Energy, was a major investor in Fervo Energy, which is one of the leaders in advancing deep hot dry rock geothermal. And in the president's declaration of energy emergency, he mentioned specifically geothermal energy. So the man is at least aware of what I've been particularly interested in, and that others might as well, as a distributed source of clean electricity from which we can make clean hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, as I mentioned, he's quite bullish on geothermal. He wants to know more about geothermal resources in Alaska. He has a number of connections to energy companies across a variety of technologies. So he has an extensive background for sure. And I took him some smoked salmon and some moose, and he loved them. So he passed the test, at least in that regard.
A good idea.
Yeah, it always
Aaron,
helps when you take refreshments, right?
yeah. Aaron, is the Secretary planning to attend the Governor's Sustainable Energy Conference in June?
I can't comment on that, but that's a very interesting proposition. Yes. Okay. Let's see here. Anybody else? Updates? All right, then let's get started with our speaker, and that is Mr. David Clarke from Alaska Marine Power, speaking to us about low carbon hydrogen export potential to Japan. And David, I know you're joined by Simon, and I don't know if you have other colleagues on this call, but I will give you the floor to regale us with the art of the possible. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Can everyone see my slides and hear me?
Yes, but I see some Japanese writing that I can't read, so.
Oh, I'll translate for you.
Okay.
So this presentation this morning is largely based on one that we gave to the Japan-Alaska Arctic Symposium back in mid-January with a few additional slides. And the Japanese writing is actually Alaska Hydrogen in Japanese, which translates as Araska Shizu. So Shizu is the Japanese word for hydrogen. So a little bit about Alaska Marine Power. It was formed by Simon Harrison and I about 3 years ago, with a mission to export renewable energy at scale and grow Alaska, and also to cool the planet. We've got a lot of experience in oil and gas developments around the world, and this experience is really applicable for developing offshore wind and hydrogen production and export. So I'm the engineering director. I had 36-year career with BP, and I'm a chemical engineering graduate. But I spent the most of my career in project management, developing mega projects around the world. And Simon, who's on the call as well, is our commercial director, and he has a lot of experience in mega project economics and finance, commercial negotiations, and asset trading. The picture on the right is actually the first project, the first place I worked, which is the Forties platform in the North Sea. And you'll see in a later slide that a lot of the infrastructure, the large crane barges, etc., that are used for oil and gas development are equally applicable for offshore wind development. So some of the key messages, Alaska can supply low carbon hydrogen to Japan. We could actually supply 8% of the Japanese requirements in 2040. We would be actually starting in the 2030s. It would be a phased development, and the renewable energy would be based on Cook Inlet offshore wind. The Alaska Hydrogen Project, we believe, is competitive, it's executable, and it's bankable now. It will be a major opportunity for Japanese and US companies, hydrogen off-takers, investment partners, equipment suppliers, shipbuilders, and operators. And Alaska Marine Power is really the project developer, and we really are sort of the supply chain integrators. Thought it might be useful to give a little primer on hydrogen. There are a rainbow colors. There's a whole rainbow full of colors for hydrogen, but I've listed the 4 main ones here, and also their carbon intensity in terms of kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen produced. So first of all, we have white hydrogen, also known as gold hydrogen or geological hydrogen. That's hydrogen that's naturally occurring in the earth, and it's got 0 greenhouse gas intensity. Next is green hydrogen, gains 0 emissions, made from renewable energy. And then we have low carbon hydrogen, which according to Japan's Hydrogen Act definition has 3.4 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram. So that has to be below, as long as it's below that threshold of 3.4. And then gray hydrogen, which is how the vast majority of hydrogen is actually made today from steam methane reforming, and that's got a much higher carbon intensity of 11.3. So I'll give you some production examples. And as we go down the list here, they get progressively more expensive, but also significantly cheaper. So at the most dirtiest way to produce hydrogen is SMR. Then if you produce it with fossil fuels and electrolysis, slightly less. Then next is SMR with carbon capture and storage. Then fossil fuel production, add in the CCUS and electrolysis. And then the cleanest by far is renewable power and electrolysis. When you look at hydrogen transportation, hydrogen is a very reactive and very small molecule. The only practical way to send it long distances onshore is by pipeline. If you want to export it, then you're really looking at liquefying it down to minus 253 degrees centigrade, which is just a few degrees above absolute zero. And that compares to minus 160, which is the temperature of LNG. You can also add a nitrogen molecule to it and export it as liquid ammonia at a much more modest temperature. So what we're looking at and what we'll be talking about today is low carbon hydrogen produced from renewable power and electrolysis, and then export to overseas markets either as liquid hydrogen or liquid ammonia. So Europe is actually ahead of the game. They're actually planning to export low carbon hydrogen to Europe in next year. This is a major project in Saudi Arabia based on the Red Sea, the NOAM project, and they're planning to produce hydrogen from onshore wind and a solar farm. They'll produce 200,000 tons of hydrogen a year. They'll transport that as liquid ammonia, and they'll actually transport it by tanker through the Suez Canal and then to markets in the UK, Hamburg, and the Netherlands. This is a pretty expensive project. It's about over $8 billion. So Japan also wants low carbon hydrogen. The Hydrogen Society Promotion Act, which was recently passed last fall, really looks to address climate change, and the Japanese are looking at a 60% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2035, and that's from a baseline of 2013 levels. So they're looking to decarbonize their electrical power generation, transportation, and heavy industry, for example, steel and cement manufacture. And this is really, they're looking to promote long-term economic growth and become a leader in hydrogen technology. How they're going to do that is really major subsidies. They're looking to spend $30 billion by 2040, and also a very, very large investment in R&D. And that's really to develop the Japanese supply chains. How they're planning to do that? Today, they produce about 43 million tons of gray hydrogen. Their 2040 target is to produce the 12 million tons a year of low carbon hydrogen. So the Japanese are really being quite pragmatic. They're not looking for perfection. Hence, they're looking for, as long as you can meet the criteria of just over 3 kilograms per kilogram of hydrogen. So basically, that's about 70% green. The tool they're using is called Contract for Difference, CFD. This is based on a model that the UK successfully used to develop or to promote offshore wind developments in the North Sea. How it works is the Japanese government would pay the difference between the gray price and the green price for a period of 15 years. And then there's an obligation to continue to produce for 10 years. So the nice thing about having the subsidy for a 15-year period is it allows the early movers to get financing, and it's a much more flexible mechanism than straight subsidies. So there's a huge new market in the Pacific. This is a picture of Kawasaki's prototype liquid hydrogen carrier. It can carry 160,000 cubic meters, which is about 10,000 tons of hydrogen. And this vessel has its design approved in principle. So if the Japanese are looking for 12 million tons a year of low carbon hydrogen, that'll require a lot of power to produce it. It's something like 700 terawatt hours per year. Just to put that in perspective, the Alaskan Rail Belt produces about 5 terawatt hours per year. If it was all imported, it would be about 1,000 cargoes a year. These carriers, they're huge. They're almost 350 meters long, about the same size as an LNG carrier. And they're pretty expensive, around 360 million each. So Australia is already hard at work. There are multiple projects that are currently being evaluated in Australia. Give some details of 3 typical ones. And I've also, for comparison, on the right, we've got what we're looking at for Alaska Hydrogen. So these projects are generally phased. We're looking to start with 50 to 100,000 tons, which is kind of in the ballpark. And Alaska has the potential to produce 1 million tons of hydrogen a year. What really stands Alaska apart is the energy source. All these other projects, and also the NOME project in Saudi Arabia, produce the renewable power from offshore wind and solar. We're looking at offshore wind and possibly geothermal as well. To transport the hydrogen to market, all the projects are looking at ammonia, and a couple of them are also looking at liquid hydrogen. In our case, liquid hydrogen is the base case because we know we can do that today without the need for hydrogen storage. But we're also working with equipment manufacturers or plant manufacturers, designers for ammonia to make sure that we can handle the intermittency. In terms of distance to market, we're a shorter distance than Queensland in Australia and significantly closer than the projects in Western Australia. And timeline, we'd be looking in the early 2030s to get this project up and running. Thought it might be worth giving a little primer on renewable energy. The big 4 are hydro, offshore wind, onshore wind, and solar. But they vary very significantly in terms of their capacity factor. The capacity factor is really the annual average output of the facility divided by its nameplate capacity. So for hydro, that's practically 100%, and geothermal would be in the same category. The other end of the spectrum, you've got solar, which has got a capacity factor somewhere between 15 and 25. But you'll notice that there's a very big difference between onshore wind and offshore wind. Onshore wind typically averaging around 30% capacity factor. Offshore wind more like 60. The reason for that is offshore you can build much larger turbines, make them higher, getting better wind, and also there's less. The topography is not an issue. So if you're supplying hydrogen to a process plant, then you have to consider the intermittency of that power source. So in terms of energy storage, which could be batteries, could be pumped hydro, or it could be actually an interim storage of the product. From hydro, you wouldn't need any, but as you go to solar, then you need the most. If you think of the projects in Saudi Arabia and Australia, they were all onshore wind and solar. If you add those two together, you get about 50% capacity factor. Compared to Alaska, the wind farm in Alaska would be has got a capacity factor of 64%. NREL did a very comprehensive study looking at the wind in Alaska. The graph on the left is the daily production. So for a 1 gigawatt wind farm, you can see what the daily production is like and how it varies throughout the year. So in actual fact, if you look at the blue that's in that rectangle, it would be 64%. Another way to illustrate that is the graph on the right, which gives the power output per fraction of the year. So you can see for almost 50% of the year, the wind farm is producing max power, and only less than 10% of the time it's not producing any power. So this just shows the offshore wind power. We're looking at, we need at least 0.5 gigawatt to justify a long transmission line from the plant, and we reach economies of scale at around 1 gigawatt. The potential that we're looking at in the best of the best wind is about 10 gigawatts, and as I mentioned before, that would allow us to produce 1 million tons a year. But what really stands Alaska and the Cook Inlet apart is absolutely fantastic geography. We got a world-class offshore wind resource. We're close to Japan. We got a brownfield site in the deep water port at Nikiski, and we've got underground hydrogen storage potential. We've got a long history of exporting energy, coal, oil and gas in the form of ammonia and LNG to Asian markets. And we got really good bilateral relationships with Japan. We do, though, have a trade imbalance at the moment. And if we can restore energy exports from Alaska, that could help address that imbalance. The picture on the right is of Dominion's wind turbine installation vessel, the Sharbrus. It's currently being built on the Gulf Coast. Basically, these are used. They can actually install 15 and 20 between 15 and 20 megawatt turbines. Basically, the vessel loads up in harbor with the components for 5 to 7 wind turbines. It then sails to location and jacks itself up so that it's rock steady, and it can install the tower, the nacelle, and the blades in 1 to 2 days, and it jacks itself down and sails to the next one. So the picture you see here is, or the simulation you see here is a fixed bottom wind turbine, which is you can build in 60 meters or less of water depth. The reason that the nacelle on these turbines is at least 500 tons, and that crane on that vessel is capable of lifting over 2,000 tons. So you can imagine how difficult it would be to install a turbine of this size on an onshore location. So our base case for the offshore wind farm is a 15 megawatt turbines, but there's a lot of 20 megawatt turbines that are on the drawing board and expected to be available very shortly. So let's have a closer look at Cook Inlet Wind. This is a study that NREL did for BOEM. The darker blues are stronger wind. You can see there's a tremendous wind resource in the Aleutians, but that tends to be deeper water, and it also is very remote from infrastructure. So we've really been concentrating on the wind resource in the lower Cook Inlet, which is in that yellow circle. And what makes this special is that this is one of 4 nearshore US locations with an average wind speed greater than 10 meters per second. It's only such location with cold dense wind, which actually gives you more power. There's a water depth less than 60 meters. Pretty much on the US West Coast, there's practically no continental shelf, so you're instantly into several hundred meters of water depth. And it's the only one that's located in an energy community, which actually attracts more subsidies. And it's got a gross capacity factor of 64%, which is very, very high quality. So why is the wind so good? These are actually screenshots from my Windy app on my phone. And you can see that regardless of which way the wind is blowing, the mountains funnel the wind from all directions into that circle. So from the west, the wind from the west, it's coming in over Lake Iliamna. From the north, it's funneled down through the Cook Inlet. From the east, it's funneled in from the Gulf of Alaska. And from the south, it's funneled up through the Selikof Strait between the mainland and Kodiak Island. Basically, the scale here is from 0 to 40 knots. The wind turbine reaches maximum power anything above 20 knots. Also, you can see that it can be, the wind can be 35, 40 knots at this location and dead calm or just light winds at Anchorage, where the Fire Island wind farm is located. So zooming in on the Cook Inlet, the best location, the best of the best wind in the Cook Inlet is in the lower Cook Inlet, and it's located between Mount Augustine and the Byron Islands. That little box that I've highlighted is roughly 60 kilometers by 40 kilometers with the capability to produce over 10 gigawatts of wind energy. Mount Augustine, of course, has significant geothermal potential. So the two projects could share a HVDC line tied back to Nikiski. That's about 110 or 185 kilometers. The reason we've gone back directly to Nikiski rather than to Homer, which is closer, is we don't want to be dependent on a third party to upgrade the onshore transmission lines. Water depth next to St. Augustine varies from 40 meters to about 130 meters next to the Byron Islands. So about a third of that rectangle could be developed with fixed bottom wind turbines. The other 2/3 would need floating development. The NREL did a full technical economic analysis for 2 locations, the purple one, which is shallow water, and the red dot, which is in deeper water. This graph shows the wind resources in the US are divided up into 7 classes for both deep and shallow water locations. And you can see that the wind farms, as illustrated by the red and blue stars, are in the top 1% of all US offshore wind resources. In fact, the shallow water location is literally off the scale. Nobody thought that the annual average wind speed could be that high. And the bar chart at the bottom just shows how the wind speed varies throughout the year. So it does drop off during the summer months. Let's have a closer look at Nikiski. Today, it's a deep water port. It's a fossil fuel energy site. So back in the late 50s, early 60s, explorers were drilling for oil in the Cook Inlet. And they discovered huge quantities of gas. Back then, the local market for natural gas was minuscule, so they had to look for ways to monetize that gas resource. So back then, they developed the US's first LNG export facility, which came on stream in the late 1960s, and it exported LNG to Japan. In fact, that was the US's only LNG facility for over 4 decades. Agrium also developed an ammonia urea plant, again for the export market. Unfortunately, as gas is depleted in the Cook Inlet and the prices became more expensive, both of those plants are now mothballed. The ammonia plant was mothballed in 2007 and the LNG plant in 2017. There's also extensive gas storage reservoirs. For example, the N-Star Singsa facility is located about 20 miles to the south. Tomorrow, we're looking to transition to a low carbon energy site with export of liquid hydrogen, liquid ammonia, and production of e-fuels, both for the domestic and the export market. Looking at Alaska hydrogen in the community, we're looking at offshore wind and geothermal being sent by HVDC line to Nikiski, where we have electrolyzers to produce hydrogen. Then that hydrogen can be liquefied for export, and we don't need any storage for that. Nitrogen can also be pulled from the air to produce a liquid ammonia, again, for the export market. We're fairly confident that we don't need reservoir storage for producing liquid hydrogen. The jury's still out on liquid ammonia. There's also significant benefits for the rail belt. Obviously, we can add additional turbines and offshore and send as much renewable energy to the rail belt grid as they can reasonably absorb. Obviously, there's limits on how much energy they can take from a single power source. In the future, so phase one would be liquid hydrogen and or liquid ammonia. Later, if we have a source of carbon, then we can produce a range of e-fuels. So the DOE have currently given a grant to SRC to look at direct air capture on the North Slope, but a more likely source of CO2 would be imports from Asia, in particular Japan, either mostly for carbon sequestration, but also that CO2 could be used to produce a wide range of e-fuels, both for domestic use, producing SAF for the airport, and e-diesel and e-gasoline also for domestic use. So e-fuels vision for Nikiski, we would have power coming in, or renewable energy power coming into Nikiski, where we can produce hydrogen. The hydrogen storage reservoirs would allow us to build up an inventory of hydrogen during the winter months to maintain full production during the summer month when the wind drops off. We worked with the Shasta Consortium of 4 national labs. Frannick was involved in that work. They looked at 90 reservoirs and came up with the top 6, which fortunately are all onshore and linked by pipeline to Nikiski. The main reservoirs for CO2 storage tend to be much larger, and they're concentrated offshore. And again, many of those are linked by pipeline to Nikiski. If we produce a range of e-fuels, liquid hydrogen, ammonia, those can be exported from the deepwater port at Nikiski. But there's also for SAF, there's an existing multi-fuel pipeline that would allow us to send SAF to Anchorage Airport. Anchorage Airport is now the 3rd largest freight airport in the world. It's got a daily demand of something like 2 million gallons of Jet A. And a lot of the airlines operating out of Anchorage Airport have got pretty ambitious SAF targets. So as mentioned before, you can actually produce the SAF. You can get the carbon from biomass. There's a lot of biomass in Alaska, but most of it's off the road system. And it's expensive to get that to a central location, central plant to make SAF. The really nice thing about CO2 imports is that the CO2 would be delivered to the dock at Nikiski at essentially 0 cost. The Japanese are trying to get rid of it, so it would effectively be delivered as liquid hydrogen to Nikiski. So let's have a look at sources of CO2. In Japan are looking to capture CO2 either for sequestration or use from industrial sources. Basically, hard to decarbonize processes like steel, cement, chemical, or paper manufacture, and also from their power plants. I forgot to mention earlier, the reason the Japanese really want to import liquid hydrogen and ammonia, they really want to use their existing infrastructure. They want to blend coal with ammonia in their existing thermal power plants, and they want to blend hydrogen with natural gas in their existing gas turbines. This way they can transition to higher levels of before they can transition to higher levels of renewables, they can actually use their existing infrastructure and reduce their emissions. The JOGMEC, which is the Japanese Agency for Metals and Energy, they have identified 9 CCS projects, which are sort of illustrated on the map on the left. They're looking to capture 20 million tons of CO2 for sequestration or use. Japan has got very little potential for carbon CO2 sequestration. Only about 5 million tons could be stored in Japan, mostly in aquifers. So they're looking at exporting the CO2. They're talking to the Indonesians, the Malaysians, and also to they've done a lot of work on importing it into the Cook Inlet. The U.S. Department of Energy has recently completed a U.S. Japan CO2 shipping feasibility study, which is very, very comprehensive and looks at all the logistics of capturing CO2 in Japan, shipping it to Alaska for sequestration. So once it gets to how to get it to the CO2 to Nikiski, there's large CO2 carriers with capacities up to 150,000 tons have currently been approved in principle. There's also a possibility of dual purpose, joint liquefied carbon dioxide and ammonia carriers. Those are planned, and Mitsubishi and NYK lines have been granted a design approval in principle. So what makes this particularly attractive is that ammonia produced in Nikiski could be exported to Japan, blended with coal in their thermal power plants, and then the CO2 captured from those plants and transported back to Alaska, either for sequestration or as a feedstock for SAF production. Benefits to Alaska for Kenai Peninsula. Potentially thousands of jobs during the construction phase, hundreds of jobs in the operating phase, and a very, very significant property tax revenue. To build all of these plants, you're really talking about tens of billions of dollars for the full development. For Alaska, obviously, it's an opportunity for Alaskan companies, state tax revenue, renewable energy storage in later phases, hydrogen fuel for transportation and heating, possibly blended with into the NSTARS grid, and value-added opportunities for manufacture and export, and production of low-carbon electrofuels. Just to summarize, Alaska can supply low-carbon energy to Japan. The Alaskan Hydrogen Project, we feel, is competitive, it's executable and bankable now. It's a major opportunity for Japanese and US companies, and Alaska Marine Power would be the project developer and integrator. And final slide. Hey, Alaska can supply low carbon hydrogen to Japan, so let's get to work. Thanks very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. That was great. How's your Japanese coming along?
Non-existent.
Oh, okay.
This is the benefit of Google Translate.
Oh, okay. Terrific, terrific.
We did actually have to check with the Japanese speaker that we weren't saying anything rude.
Okay, terrific. All right. I see some questions in the chat. So let's go to those first. Let's see here. What are this is from Bill Lady. What are prospects for exporting ANS gas as clean ammonia, assuming total carbon capture and storage of waste CO2 at an ammonia plant via liquid ammonia pipeline paralleling? You know what, Bill, I'm going to let you ask this question. Are you still there? What's Japan's market for ammonia?
Sorry. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, David. If there were an ammonia plant, large scale, several billion CFD input of methane with total CCS of the CO2 byproduct, could we export then liquid ammonia in a pipeline paralleling the new ANS gas line if it were ever built, or even paralleling TAPS if that were possible to stick it on the same support structure, then exported as liquid liquid NH3 from Tidewater. Would that make technical and economic sense? And what is I guess you covered what is the market for ammonia in Japan that would be coal-fired with coal and LNG and thermal plants. Is that right?
Yes, so ammonia can be burned, can be blended with coal in the thermal plants, but also ammonia is a hydrogen carrier. So you can actually split the ammonia when you get to the market and actually have hydrogen. So you could use hydrogen in steel plants or cement plants. So the market is potentially huge for liquid ammonia. Actually, AGDC in the application a few years ago for a hydrogen hub, AGDC did propose when they built the plant, the pipeline to Nikiski of refurbishing the existing Agrium, now Nutrien ammonia plant to produce ammonia for export with carbon sequestration. So that's that idea was looked at, but of course we weren't successful in getting funding for a hydrogen hub here in Alaska, but it's highly dependent on the pipeline being built.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. There's a question about how the recent EO on offshore wind leasing permitting would impact this project.
Yeah, it's not a ban at the moment. I think it's a temporary hold until they review it. I think a lot of the objections to offshore wind farms have been on the east coast of the US. They're in interference with shipping routes and also wind view. Site view. And those really don't apply in the Lower Cook Inlet. It wouldn't really be in anyone's view shed. It's well off shipping routes. So less. Oh, and the other issue with the East Coast, I think, was that with intermittent power supply, you really need a fossil fuel backup, which is expensive. And that's not an issue in the Lower Cook Inlet because we're actually using the power to generate fuels. It's hard to tell. Things change very, very fast these days. So we're looking, who knows what the legislation will be in 2 to 5 years.
David, if I might just pitch in here.
Sure.
There's a dynamic here between domestic power generation and President Trump's desire to make Alaska, America, an energy superpower. Yes, he's against wind farms, and yes, this project certainly, for its later phases, depends on wind power, but could get going on geothermal. But if given the choice of either banning wind farms or foregoing the opportunity to be a major supplier of hydrogen to Southeast Asia, which is a part of the energy superpower agenda, who knows? A week is a long time in politics.
Well said. Thank you. Another question, is there an NREL report on the Japan-Alaska project?
There's a NETL report
okay.
on it.
If anyone has a link to that, maybe put it in the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, that's the first one. That's the first component on logistics that's been issued. I think there's other reports to follow.
Okay.
Talking about reports, we we touched on the Alaska Department of Transport's desire to understand how to make SAF here. Yeah, we shared Tim Leach's concern that they appeared to be looking principally at converting fish waste and chip fat and other such stuff and biomass to SAF, which is a way to make SAF, but may not be the best way, particularly at scale. We only eat so much fish and so many French fries, so yeah, we went in and spoke to the Department of Transport, Alaska Department of Transport, just a few days ago. A very useful conversation, and have offered to share our research and expertise to ensure that their study is balanced. Is that a good word? Balanced? There, yeah, something like that.
Sure, I think we get your drift. Thank you. Another question in the chat is, what is the anticipated cost of the hydrogen produced by this process?
I'll try that as well. Really depends. It depends. Really, making hydrogen, capturing CO2 is not an economic proposition anywhere in the world. So governments pay people to do it. Making renewable energy isn't, apart from maybe solar these days in some places, is not really an economic proposition without subsidy. So it all boils down to what subsidy is available and who pays it. Are the Japanese going to pay the subsidy for all of it, or is America going to pay some of it? So I'm not going to speculate about that. I'm not going to get into numbers because that's kind of part of our secret sauce. But I will say that if you look at the basic building blocks of the projects that we're competing against, which are largely Australian, they seem to, we look as though, by having a very high capacity factor with wind and geothermal, and not therefore needing to use huge battery banks and other such stuff, and being closer to market and having a military, very strong military and trading relationship with Japan, that just strategically and using very large sort of macroeconomic considerations, we appear to be very well placed to compete against these Australians. Australian subsidies from the Australian government are a fraction of what they are in the US. That may or may not be relevant, but President Trump is pushing the Japanese to buy Alaskan LNG. Maybe in the not too distant future, he'll be trying to persuade them to buy Alaskan hydrogen. We'll see.
Perfect, thanks. There's a little bit of a discussion about why small modular reactors are considered to be a dirty source of, or is that steam methane reforming? No, that's small modular reactors. Considered to be a dirty source of hydrogen in one of your early slides. And JR has jumped in.
I think it was, I don't think we mentioned small nuclear reactors.
Okay, it was steam methane reforming. Sorry,
Yeah, steam
SMRs can
methane
mean a lot of
reforming,
things.
Yeah.
I read that the wrong way. Maybe that was the source of the confusion.
Okay.
And whoever asked that question, did you want to clarify what you meant, or were there more questions from the discussion in response to that?
Well, methane reforming is a dirty source of hydrogen production.
Right, 'cause it's
Because it emits very large quantities of CO2. If, on the other hand, you pair it with efficient CO2 sequestration, then there's nothing wrong with it. And the Japanese will buy it. They don't care where it comes from. They're ambivalent. So long as the emissions are less than 3.4 kilograms per kilogram. So if you can make ammonia with from gas using SMR, as long as you responsibly dispose of the CO2 permanently, to get below that number, they're ambivalent. They don't mind how you make it.
It's actually a very pragmatic approach from the Japanese. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking to say for as long as it's around 70% green, they're happy.
Okay, great, thank you. Tim, do you want to ask your question?
I think Carl might have had his hand up before my question got in the chat, and I see he mentioned it. If that's okay, just to push it forward.
Sure, Carl, go ahead.
I remember from my first meeting with your group, Dr. Whitney, that I suggested a green hydrogen pipeline to Japan. If you guys remember that, I sent an email pertaining to that, and I did the research and everything. I wonder if Simon and David would consider my solution or my project as one of the potential solution for that for this project.
Yeah, we're looking at around 3,300 kilometers from Kenai to Japan. That would be an extremely expensive pipeline, and the problem with it is you can't phase it. You either have to build a whole pipeline or no pipeline. So it's really much more practical to send it by ship.
Yeah, because one of my things was that the pipeline would be basically able to integrate into your current system. And as I said, I have brainstormed it several times, and I've done it. And I definitely have a whole pipeline itself in terms of, because I was looking at running the pipeline along the coast, along the islands of Japan, the islands of Alaska, and then at Adak, which is out there, that little tiny island just past Otto, Adak, before you reach the Otto space station out there on the Alaskan islands. Then you take from there, and that will reduce the distance to about maybe 2,200 miles to Japan. So that was the option.
The Japanese are definitely interested in getting clean energy in all forms from Alaska. And they have this concept called the Alaska Energy Park, which they're trying to develop, which is they're very keen to look at all options. One of the options they're particularly keen about isn't a pipeline to Japan, but a high voltage direct current power cable. So you generate electricity.
I could integrate that. That can be integrated into the pipeline.
And you wire it to Japan. The problem with all these things is the same problem that the European Union is having with Russia in the Baltic at the moment, which is all these connections, particularly in under or around the high seas, is that you can go around cutting them extremely easily. They're extremely difficult to defend, and therefore not robust to geopolitical developments. And therefore it doesn't support national security of either party. The party that transmits it, the party receives it.
Simon, I'm definitely interested in this. I'm definitely interested in this project, and I wouldn't mind being a part of your team, and also team up with you with my company, because definitely I have a solution for that, and I would definitely look in terms of all options, in terms of the pipeline also, and also in terms of using vessels. So there's a number of ideas going through my head in terms of when I created that solution, like that was what under the Biden administration, and since I presented it several times, and I presented to even the Department of Energy, and they didn't jump on it right away because they were wanting me to just find somebody who will purchase it, purchase the hydrogen, and they want a PPP agreement, and I couldn't deliver that part of it. So my thing was instead of doing it in New York, I would move it to Alaska, and basically then take it from there, because I know pipeline this project works.
Yeah, write us an email. Tell us about it.
Okay.
For me?
Write us an email. Tell us about it.
Oh no,
Excellent.
definitely I could forward the email to you, because as I said, I presented several times. And one of the things with and Dr. Whitney just said that, guess what, the secretary of the Department of Energy is very of a background in terms of geothermal, and definitely I was looking at geothermal for this also. So definitely geothermal could integrate into this, and at the same time do wonders in terms of boosting this project.
Great. I'm going to let you take this offline, Carl. I appreciate this input. Please feel free to follow up with David and Simon directly.
Definitely. Thank you.
I'm going to ask another question from the chat. What's the condition of the existing infrastructure that's being talked about for repurposing?
So the AGDC, we're looking to refurbish the existing ammonia plant, but that plant was built in the mid 1960s. So I think there was a pretty hundreds of millions would have to be spent to refurbish it. We're actually looking at sort of a new plant. Generally, when you get into refurbishing old plants, particularly something that's 60 years old, it's a bit like peeling an onion, and usually you regret that you didn't actually build a new plant. But having said that, the jetties, the storage tanks for ammonia may well be suitable. But we're not looking, that's not our base case to refurbish existing plants.
Okay. The second part of that question is, with a capacity factor of 60% for wind and geothermal, what LCOE is needed for the Alaska Hydrogen Project to be competitive, and what percent subsidy from Japan is needed for the project to be bankable?
Oh, that's an easy question to answer. If you pay us some money, we'll tell you.
All right. I'm not going to give away all their secrets.
Yeah, as long as we're competitive with other international suppliers.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, you know?
That's right. It is. It is. Does an offshore wind facility in Alaska require any state or federal legislation, or is the permitting process already in place for both state and federal waters?
Yeah, we'd actually be located in federal waters, so BOEM would be the regulator.
Okay. And going back to my misinterpretation of SMR, have you determined the cost of project and production using modular nuclear as an energy source?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Is the AMP project supported with federal funds?
Not currently, no.
Okay. Okay. Oh, and some clarification about what was meant with SMR for the original question there. Bernie Smith would like to know how many megawatts of power can be put into the rail belt grid without affecting the export to Japan.
Yeah, we've got at least 10 gigawatts of potential in the Lower Cook Inlet. There's significantly more if we go outside that best of the best area. So there's really unlimited how much we could actually put into the grid. We just expand the farm, but there is a strict limitation on how much the utilities could actually accept from a single source. So you're probably talking tens or maybe up to 100 megawatts would be maximum that they could absorb.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, another way of answering that is to say, you know, we've been in discussions with the utilities. They would love to buy our power at its average cost. But,
Okay.
you know, we say, well, the average cost, this is the average cost for a gigawatt farm, because that's the sort of natural scale of it. And they say, well, can we have the average cost, but only a quarter of the quantity? And you go, no, that doesn't work. You know, if we do that, we have to find another a customer for the other 3/4. So, you know, we're too big for Alaska. We're too big. Alaska is too small to be the anchor customer for this wind farm. But it's not too. But as soon as you've got an anchor customer and you can build a gigawatt or near or something between half a gigawatt and a gigawatt, then the state of Alaska and the utilities can become secondary customers. And
Okay.
they'd be
Okay.
very keen to do that.
Okay, thanks. What is your company's interest and intended role in the whole concept? I think I know the interest, it's profits, but the role?
Oh, I think
Coordinator?
you're putting words in our mouth with profits.
sorry.
You know, I spent a career in the oil and gas industry, and I'm speaking for myself here, not David, which is that I like to think that by pursuing a renewable power transition into the economy as a sort of way of paying reparations for a life misspent. But so no, I think our role is somewhat more to do with giving back to the community that we live in than necessarily making a huge profit.
Okay, that's heavy, Simon. A life misspent. You learned a lot of valuable skills, and I'm sure you're applying now.
Yeah, but it was a
Very
bit like
apologetic for keeping
late in my
everybody's houses
career.
warm.
I suddenly realized that maybe I'm working for a cigarette company. You know, it's like
Yeah, we really see ourselves as project integrators, sort of joining up all the dots. And there's a lot of dots on this. But the nice thing is that we can actually do it in phases, so we don't have to do everything all at once.
And it's
Okay.
fun. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Good.
been really challenging.
Yeah, for sure. Bill, I'm not sure your question is answerable by these folks, but Bill is wondering if Japan is tracking the geothermal industry's progress in deep hot dry rock geothermal, which is ubiquitous throughout the earth. So he wants to know why import energy if Japan can produce indigenous energy. I'm not sure that's a question for you, but if
Yeah,
go
and
for it.
I'm not aware of it. I think even if that was possible in Japan, it's some years out. So really the interim solution is to import low carbon hydrogen, again, to sort of maximize their existing infrastructure, their thermal and their gas turbine power plants. So it's not either or, but I think the geothermal is probably some decades out.
Okay,
And also, while Japan is very volcanic and has lots of geothermal potential, you got to recognize that it's an extremely densely populated country, and there are a lot of social and religious repercussions or impacts associated with turning warm water springs into power plants. They're not very keen on it.
Okay, thank you. Carl, I see your hand up. Do you have a new question? If you want to continue the conversation you had before, I respectfully ask you just to pursue that individually.
Yeah, I have a new question. What is your target market price in terms of dealing with in terms of supplying this green hydrogen to Japan?
1 cent less than what the Australians offer.
I will ask the question, what would Australia selling it for?
Excellent, thank you. All right, these are some great questions. Go ahead, Tim.
Oh yeah, just circling back if I could, on the modeling software that the Japanese use there, David, or Simon, do you know if the energy cost, if you will, of shipping that liquefied CO2 is incorporated or part of the modeling that Japan uses to determine if that 3.4 kilograms CO2 per kilogram hydrogen is met or not?
I think I can answer this. For example, the measure is at the jetty here in Alaska. It doesn't include the shipping of the ammonia or the liquid hydrogen across the Pacific. How that works for the ship coming back full of CO2, I've no idea.
Got it. And I think my general assumption is there's a similar difference as to what you've just described, Simon. There's a similar difference between what the CORSIA model has and what our GREET model is, where our GREET model does have that level of detail in the model. And folks who actually work these models, some of the national lab staff on this call perhaps know this better than I do, I'm sure, and could correct any errors I might be making.
Yeah,
the Japanese Hydrogen Act really specifies the carbon intensity of the hydrogen. So if you were using the carbon to produce SAF, then that's a different criteria.
Okay, thanks.
But the Japanese approach to climate mitigation, I think, is very interesting. You know, they're not saying we got to have clean hydrogen, green hydrogen. They're saying let's start off with clean hydrogen. In this country, for example, we look at massive emissions of CO2 and say to cure it, we have to have CCUS sequestration, and you've got to be able to sequester the CO2 for 1 million years with no leakage. And you go, and if you can't do that, well, we'll just keep emitting CO2. The Japanese seem to take a very pragmatic approach, so that, you know, if you would extend that to sequestration, you might say, well, so long as 80% of it stays in the ground, that'll be pretty good. Of which case sequestration will become a lot cheaper and a lot simpler. When we saw this Hydrogen Society Act of Japan, where they are not looking for green hydrogen, they're looking for low carbon hydrogen, we saw an opportunity which we can meet. Making green hydrogen 100% green, perfection, you know, is extremely difficult. Making 70% green is practical, doable.
Thank you. JR.
I just needed to pipe up on the steam methane reformer, because that is the main way that hydrogen is currently made in the world. So it's probably worth not just dismissing it as SMRs are dirty. A steam methane reformer takes water and methane gas, and it reforms it into synthesis gas, which is a mixture of hydrogen and carbon monoxide mostly. And that gets used as the basis for most of the petrochemical industry in the world. So that carbon that's in the CO would go into making, you know, everything from, you know, paint to, plastics or whatever. It's not that necessarily gets emitted. The steaming methane reformer is taking that methane from, you know, natural gas lines, it's compressing it and it's heating it up. And, you know, how you create the heat and power is what's driving those CO2 emissions. So, you know, as we start contemplating a hydrogen economy, you don't want to just dismiss the main workhorse of how hydrogen is created as you know, something that is necessarily going to be, you know, dirty and we're not going to look at it. You have to kind of figure out how it's utilized so that you can actually use that feedstock for, you know, purposes of making the things that are needed out of carbon.
JR, we're not dismissing it, we're just competing against it.
I think the Japanese target by 2040 was to make about 27% of their hydrogen from renewable sources. So yeah, no, you're absolutely, we're going to need steam methane reforming for a very, very long time.
And the 27% that they want to buy of low carbon hydrogen can be made by steam methane reforming, so long as it's accompanied with essentially reasonably efficient sequestration.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that it's not the SMR itself that's making CO2.
Oh, I think you're splitting hairs, but there you go.
All right. We are just about at the end of our session. David and Simon, thank you very much for your time, for the presentation. If you're able to share the slides, please send them to Patty and she can distribute them to the group. We very much enjoyed this, very informative, great discussion and questions from the audience. As always, you can be in touch with these gentlemen for further conversations and discussion. It's great to see all the momentum around this project. Before we close, I will just announce, and Patty, check me on this, our next meeting, which I believe will be our final meeting until the fall, is May 6th. And Patty, can you remind me who the presenter is for that meeting?
Yeah, we have Paul McKinley is organizing it with Medi. And we'll be sending more information. And that date was correct, Aaron. It was Tuesday, May 6th, last one before the summer break.
So we will have more information for you shortly, but stay tuned. Before we wrap, any other announcements or updates from the group? It's always a pleasure to see and interact with all of you. In that case, thank you all for attending. Patty will send out links and recordings, and we will see you all next time. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Yep. Thank you.